Hi, my name is Sarah Dvorak, and I will be showing you my final project for PSY 420 Intro to Applied Behavioral Analysis. So we will be looking into the case of Jimmy Schrute, and his birthday is March 1st, 2013, which makes him 5 years old. The date of the evaluation took place on May 16th, 2018, over a course of 5 hours in Elmhurst, Illinois. When I first met the family, I noticed that the child would immediately become distressed whenever the parents took the attention off of him. Whenever the parents would look away from the child, he would begin to bite his hand repeatedly. This behavior would cease after the parent gave him their full attention. Later in the meeting process, I noticed that the child would partake in the same behavior when he did not have immediate access to his iPad or his toys. When the parents had the iPad or toys out of reach, he would start the biting behavior. Again, the behavior would stop after the iPad or a toy was given to the child. Overall, a couple of replacement behaviors would be beneficial to implement in this family's life. It is important to define biting in Jimmy's case. This would include having any portion of the child's hand pass the plane of his teeth, followed by closing of the mouth, resulting in an audible gnawing sound. Behavior starts when biting begins and stops when hand is removed past the plane of teeth for more than 1 second. Based off of the parent report and ABC observation data, the function of the following behaviors are attention, because the child desires full attention from his parents, and access to tangibles, because the child wants to have access to his iPad whenever he pleases. Some of the current antecedents to the biting behavior is the child wants his parents to be looking at them, so that attention, and the child wants to play on his iPad. The current consequences to this behavior is the parents will end up stopping what they are doing to physically stop the child from biting, ultimately giving him that attention. And also the parents will give in by giving their child access to his iPad in order to stop the biting. In order to ultimately stop the biting, we need to implement some replacement behaviors. These would include functional communication and simply following rules. To increase functional communication, I would propose to use cue cards that show pictures of possible items that the child might desire or activities that the child might want to partake in, or emotions he is feeling. He would pick up these items to show to his parents, nanny, or his current caregiver to properly communicate his emotions, wants, or needs. To increase following rules, the child will follow the instructions of the demand that is given to him by either the behavior staff, his parents, his nanny, or his grandparents within 5 seconds. If the demand is not completed, the demand will be given again. Some of the antecedent measures for functional communication: you will always want to have the cue cards in sight and categorized into separate piles of emotions, activities, and needs. Therefore, Jimmy can always have that immediate access to the cards so he doesn't get upset. And for following rules, you always want to have the reinforcer in close proximity so the child can see what they're working towards. The consequent measures of functional communication: depending on the cue card used, the child will be given his iPad, attention from his parents, or whatever the card may say. In addition to this, the child will also receive the preferred reinforcer. For following rules, the child will be given the preferred reinforcer if the demand is completed within the 5 seconds as defined in the behavioral definition. In order for Jimmy to learn these replacement behaviors, he needs to have access to preferred items, which will be given to him when he displays correct behavior. After completing a single item preference assessment, we were able to narrow down which items would have the highest amount of reinforcement. The items used in this assessment were goldfish, books on trucks, iPad, blueberries, and a toy truck. These items were chosen based on early observation of the child and through talking with Jimmy's parents. After completing the assessment, we found that goldfish and the iPad were most likely to be used as a reinforcer. So now that we know which would be the most accurate reinforcers, which would be the iPad and goldfish, in addition to the parent's attention, we can move on to the materials that are needed for protocol. For functional communications, we'll need the cue cards, which can be made from large note cards, bright colored markers, and the printed pictures of the item. For following rules, you will need to have the various chores like picking up the toys, clearing their dinner plate, their homework, so you'll need a paper, pencil, pens, and workbooks. And for both of these, you'll need the parent, grandparent, nanny, or the behavioral staff to implement the demands. As for measuring these changes in the behaviors, for functional communication, we'll look at the frequency or the number of cue cards used per hour of the first session. For following rules, we'll look at the percentage correct. Same thing with the hours of the baseline session. And for biting, we'll look at frequency per hour of the baseline session. And as for the data itself, it is pretty much all over the place for all three behaviors. So for the functional communication, it kind of goes up and down as the hours go by. Same thing with the biting and with the following of the demands. Finally, based on the baseline data, Jimmy has much room to learn these replacement behaviors as his numbers are inconsistent and not showing any improvement. Overall, Jimmy can benefit from this behavioral replacement plan.